Do you ever notice that the same task, writing an email, having a difficult conversation, sketching an idea, can feel effortless with one soundtrack and impossible with another? If so, you've already met the invisible director of your day, sound. In this video, we'll explore how the background sounds around you, their rhythm, timbre, frequency, content, and silence act like a psychological costume you put on for thinking, feeling, and deciding. We'll move from the simple observation, sound changes my mood, to the science, how acoustic features shape attention, emotion, and moral judgment. And finally, to a practical toolkit, reproducible sound recipes you can deploy for focus, empathy, and creative thinking. Think of sound as weather for the mind. A gentle breeze can cool the heat of anxiety. A steady rain can mask the temptation of distraction. A sudden thunderclap can snap you out of stagnation. Like any weather, sound can be forecasted and to some extent manufactured. First, the what and why in plain language. Sound is not just a background accessory. It directly engages neural systems that govern arousal, reward, and social cognition. Low-frequency rumble tends to raise arousal and suspense. Bright, high-frequency textures can sharpen attention or produce irritation depending on intensity. Rhythm entrains the brain's timing circuits. A steady pulse nudges your motor and attention networks into synchrony, while irregular rhythms invite exploration. Melodic contours and human voices activate neural pathways related to social evaluation, which is why certain music can literally make you feel more compassionate, or conversely, more suspicious. Importantly, these effects are probabilistic and person-dependent. What soothes one person may distract another. The ethical and practical goal is not to force everyone into a single right soundtrack, but to design soundscapes that bias outcomes predictably in service of the task at hand. Now the how. 3 core acoustic dimensions to control: tempo, rhythm, spectral content, timbre and frequency, and dynamics pauses, and 3 psychological targets: focus, empathy, creativity. Match dimension to target and you have a recipe. For focus, tempo and rhythm matter most. Use a low-complexity, consistent rhythmic scaffold around 60-80 beats per minute, BPM, roughly the tempo of common resting heart rates and many concentration-enhancing tracks. Opt for textures that are harmonically simple and spectrally warm, low mid-frequencies dominant, minimal or no lyrical content, and moderate volume. Think background ambient or instrumental electronic with a steady pulse. Add a layer of soft broadband sound like pink noise or gentle rainfall if you need to mask intermittent distractions. Keep volume moderate, roughly conversational level in around 50-65 dB depending on environment, so sound supports attention without hijacking it. Practically, create a focus playlist of 30-50 minutes. Choose tracks that maintain a steady rhythmic character, use a fade-in to avoid abrupt starts, and employ a timer, 25-50-minute work blocks, where the end of the timer is accompanied by a small musical cue. That cue becomes a learned boundary and helps consolidate attention. For empathy and perspective taking, slow the tempo, enrich vocal and acoustic cues, and favor human timbres. Music with slower tempos, 50-70 BPM, gentle dynamic contours and instruments or textures that have vocal-like formants, soft piano, cello, mellow brass, or intimate acoustic guitar, tend to engage the brain's social attention networks. Importantly, presence of human voice, spoken softly or choral textures without dominant lyrics, increases feelings of connectedness. But be careful with semantic lyrics, which can pull attention to narrative instead of emotional attunement. For conversations where you want greater empathy, conflict resolution, active listening, use a brief sound warm-up of 3-5 minutes, low volume, slow tempo material played before the talk to set a calmer baseline. Pair this with structured silence cues. A 3-second silent pause after an emotional statement helps the brain process affect rather than reflexively respond. For creativity and ideation, introduce controlled novelty and spectral richness. Creativity benefits from mild unpredictability, variable tempos, polyrhythms, timbral shifts, and intermittent surprising elements. Use tracks with evolving textures, non-repetitive melodic fragments, or even environmental sounds that carry an element of random order. City soundscapes, curated field recordings. Incorporate deliberate sonic interruptions. Short moments of gentle dissonance or a novel instrument, every 3-7 minutes to nudge associative thinking. For longer creative sessions, alternate between stimulation windows, 20-40 minutes of rich variable sound, and incubation windows of near silence or pink noise to allow consolidation. Across all recipes, dynamics and pauses are the secret sauce. Structured silence is not the absence of sound but an active ingredient. Pauses give the prefrontal cortex room to reevaluate. Allow your hippocampus to consolidate recent information and make subsequent sounds feel more informative. Use silence strategically, before a decision, after an emotional disclosure, at the transition between tasks. Now some practical step-by-step protocols you can test today. The toolkit for the mind. Protocol 1. The 30-minute focus sprint. Preparation. Choose a playlist of instrumental tracks with tempo 60-75 BPM, or use a pink noise plus pulse generator app. Set volume to comfortable conversational level. Work for 25 minutes, then let the playlist include a 5-minute cool-down track with lower volume and slower tempo before you check email. Repeat this cycle 3 times and record perceived productivity and distraction rate. Protocol 2. The empathy warm-up. Before an important conversation, play 3 5 minutes of slow, vocal-like instrumental music, no lyrics, at low volume. Sit in silence for 30 seconds, breathe for 3 cycles, then begin the conversation. During the dialogue, honor structured silence. After your partner speaks, count silently to 3 before responding. Observe whether the emotional tone shifts and whether escalation decreases. Protocol 3. Creative contrast sessions. Alternate 30 minutes of rich, novel sound, variable tempo and timbre, with 10 minutes of silence or low-level pink noise. During silence, jot raw associations without judgment. This alternation tends to increase the variety of remote associations you can access. Some practical decisions about equipment and context. Headphones give precise control and reduce environmental variability, but over-ear headphones at moderate volume can create a focused bubble that also isolates you socially. Good for individual work, less ideal for group empathy tasks where shared speakers create a common acoustic field. Speakers with well-placed stereo image can scaffold shared attention in group settings. Consider directional placement. Sound coming from slightly behind and above tends to be less intrusive than directly in front. Visual mapping helps production and communication. Use spectrograms and sound maps in presentations to show frequency balance, rhythmic consistency, and moments of novelty so listeners can see why a track is more or less suitable for a task. If you produce a playlist for your team, include simple metadata. Intended use, focus/empathy/creative, tempo, typical duration, and suggested volume range. A word on binaural beats, alpha theta entrainment, and other popular claims. Some people report benefits and certain neural entrainment effects are plausible, but the evidence is mixed and person-dependent. Treat these tools as experiments. Try them, measure subjectively, and keep the variables you control, tempo, timbre, volume, consistent to isolate effects. Ethical and individual considerations matter deeply. Music and sound are culturally loaded and emotionally charged. Always ask consent before introducing sound into a shared space and offer opt-outs. Sounds that calm one person may re-traumatize another. The role of expectation and learning is powerful. If you consistently pair a specific cue with a desired mental state, a particular track with deep concentration, the cue can acquire conditioning power over days to weeks. That means you can intentionally train your soundtrack to become a reliable cognitive tool. Measurement and iteration. Use simple pulse checks. 3 subjective questions rated 1-5 after sessions. Focusedness, emotional clarity, creative output. And iterate playlists based on results. Keep a simple log for a week and look for patterns associated with task success. Visualize outcomes as before-after spectrogram overlays to show how different frequency bands correlate with reported states. Finally, short exercises to build awareness. 1. Perform a 5-minute listening test where you silently note how different textures change your breath and thought tempo. 2. During your next meeting, intentionally introduce a 30-second silence after a major point and observe how people react. 3. Create a 2-track A/B test for a task you find hard. 1 track for focus, 1 for silence, and swap them across sessions to see which reliably improves performance. Remember, sound is not a magic pill, it's a lever. Its power lies in its consistency and design. When you craft a soundtrack with intention, you're not avoiding hard work, you're arranging the conditions that make that work easier to enter and sustain. Think of it as designing the room where your mind will do its best work. If you found these sound recipes useful, try one this week and note the change. If a 30-minute focus sprint multiplied your productive output, or a 3-minute empathy warm-up softened a difficult conversation, it means you've begun to learn the sound language of your own mind. If that resonates, like, share, and subscribe to Mind Unlocked. Help us spread practical, science-informed tools for better thinking and bring a friend so we can build a playlist for a calmer, clearer, more creative life together.